This is HR in Review, a podcast dedicated to HR thought leadership, actionable advice, and all the latest developments in human resource management.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of HR in Review. I'm Amelia Brand, your host for today, and this time we're discussing the Great Resignation, exploring exactly why people are quitting their jobs and what employers and organisations should be doing to retain top talent during this turbulent time. My first guest is Lena Thompson, who's the director of Driving Miss Daisy Woking and also a life purpose and human design coach. I had the pleasure of talking to her about the concept of purpose within the workplace, exploring how that concept is closely tied to conversations surrounding the Great Resignation. My second guest is Dr. Martina Olbert, founder and CEO of Meaning.Global, a global business imagination consultancy which helps clients imagine and invent new meaningful features that serve our complete humanity and the planet. Here we discuss the ways in which diversity issues are impacting the ongoing Great Resignation, as well as the long-lasting impacts of this movement.
Hi, Lena. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really great to have you on.
Hi, Amelia. Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Great. So would you like to start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what aspects of HR you're interested in?
Sure. So I come from a strong corporate background. I've spent over 15 years in a corporate arena where I consulted to major organizations like Microsoft, CBRE, Bank of Kuwait, literally all over the world. But no matter really how successful my career got, I didn't really know who I was, and I felt very unfulfilled in my life. So eventually it's kind of the whole journey was for me to leave my career and to discover who I am and really to find more meaning and fulfillment with what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. The aspect of HR I'm particularly interested in is self-development, employee self-development, because having been on this journey and having been in a corporate world for so long, I truly believe that when people know who they are, they will perform better, they will engage better, they will become more committed to doing what they love, and there will also be a lot less conflict in organizations, which means that the leaders actually will have an opportunity to lead rather than manage and get involved in conflicts and dramas.
Great. So the main topic for today is obviously the Great Resignation. So what do you take, if anything, to be great about the Great Resignation? And also, I guess, on the flip side of that, what do you take to be some of the main issues that organizations have faced throughout this movement?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in any challenging situation, there is a lesson that we must all learn. And for me personally, the great thing about this situation is that it forced leaders in the industry to come together and really start asking different questions, and to look for different solutions, perhaps even realizing that if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you always got. And that's been, happening maybe not on such a high scale, but unless some drastic changes happen, even more people are going to leave and the companies will lose their great talents. So what I think happened is that it really opened up their minds to new ways of leading and recognizing that in order for organizations to be really successful and to thrive, they have got to adapt to this new world, a world where each person is recognized for their unique talents, a world where I would say purpose is actually more powerful than profit and power, and also where vulnerability is not seen as a weakness, but rather as an essential quality of a great leader.
Great. Well, as you just mentioned there, I'm quite aware that you focus a bit on the concept of purpose within the workplace. So what do you mean by this, and what does purpose and the Great Resignation have to do with each other?
Sure. So what I think, this pandemic gave us the last few years is to drastically shift the way that we view and we feel about our work, right? Because we finally had an opportunity to slow down and really evaluate what matters to us most. And also whether we're on the right path. And I mean, that was my journey, when I quit my successful 6-figure career with no plan, really, just to go out into the world and right, show me the way. What am I meant to do? And I think it's happening on a larger scale because I work a lot, or I see around me also people who just who am I? What am I meant to do? And previously we just never had this pause And that's enabled us to pause. So people now have higher standards than ever that come, when it comes to employment, because for many, the paycheck is just not enough. They look for work that is more meaningful, more fulfilling. And if they don't find it actually within their job, within the companies, they will leave. So I believe that organizations actually must make sure that their purpose is aligned with the values of their employees. And for that, communication and authenticity is very important.
So, kind of leading on from that, then, what exactly do you think people are looking for, and what do you think people want out of work today as we approach this new normal, I guess?
Yeah, so I mean, as you said, it's basically leading on to that, they want meaning, fulfillment, and
Yeah.
also an environment, I think, where they recognize for their strengths and for their talents, and where they do the jobs that they feel inspired and I guess energized by what they do, right? So, for companies, it's really more than ever important to engage the employees in order to guarantee success of the business and also in the future. McKinsey actually did a survey, and they said that the top reasons why people left their jobs was due to uncaring leaders, which came up at 35%, unsustainable work performance and expectation, lack of career development, lack of meaningful work, and lack of support for health and well-being. So those were the core reasons.
Well, yeah, kind of, I guess, also leading on from this, I read a very interesting article of yours titled Three Tips on How to Make Powerful Decisions to Avoid Mental Burnout and Overwhelm. And here you spoke about the importance of taking pauses every so often within your daily schedule, and also the importance of intentionally setting your day up with clarity to optimize your decision-making capabilities. So, why do you think people are so burnt out? Like, why do we even have to talk about this? And do you think also this is contributing towards the Great Resignation?
Yeah, there's so many ways I can approach that. I can
Mm.
actually talk about the burnout and the decision making literally like for 3 days nonstop. I know we don't have time, but what I actually think is that people don't get burnt out because they work too hard. Because I'm sure you've also been in a situation where you can put so many hours in, but you like got on a flow and you almost like lose track of
Yeah.
time, right? We've all been in this situation, so we know that that's not completely true. But what happens is that often we do tasks which are not aligned with our strength, tasks that drain us, tasks that we only said yes because we felt pressured to say yes to, because we're trying to prove ourselves, because we're trying to show how valuable we are, because we actually are committing to something, and it takes so much energy to be who we are not. So we're
Yeah.
compromising our integrity. So it's really more being out of integrity with ourselves. That's what causes the burnout. And that takes a great leader, a great manager to actually notice what's happening. And instead of actually piling people with things to do, actually telling them to step back and really to understand what is it that they love about the work. Because I can guarantee you that if one person doesn't love what they do, somebody else will. You know what I mean? We're so
Yeah.
unique. So like for me personally, like if I was giving in my previous career, I was a business architect and I love designing workflows, like automating processes. And I could literally sit into the night, work through the night, come up with solutions, and that would not drain me. But give me like documentation to write, it will take me a whole day to write 2 pages, and I
Yeah.
would be drained completely, right? But I wasn't aware of it, so I would just do it because I was told to do it, rather than like, hang on a second, I hate doing it. It drains me. Maybe a person next to me would love to do that. So why don't they do it? And I will do
Mm.
maybe something different, something I'm naturally good at.
Mm. Yeah, it's super interesting what you were saying there. I guess it all kind of boils down to alignment, right? And aligning what you're doing with your strengths, as you said.
Totally.
Um, but I guess my last question then concerns more so how we move forward with all of this. And I'd really love to explore how you think companies can engage and retain their staff. And, I guess on top of that, what do you think needs to change within organizations?
Yeah, so also it's another really big topic. I recently did like an hour-long webinar, but I think that the
Yeah.
essential three topics the companies have got to focus on is to align their purpose with the values of the employees.
Mm.
Another big thing is to understand the people's strength and also how to leverage them, because a lot of us still focus on our weaknesses and we try to build on our weaknesses, and we're not really aware of our own strengths, either because they are so natural to us or because we've suppressed them because somebody told us we were not good enough. And it's the job of a leader to actually recognize this potential, the strength within people, and leverage them, and then align the tasks to the strengths of the people. And then the third one, I believe, is that develop people not only through professional development, but most importantly through personal development. And actually, there's a great quote, I always quote it when we speak on that subject, and it was Henry Ford. He said, "The only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them stay."
So, a quick question we like to ask all of our guests in our podcast to round up the whole thing is, what is the single biggest change you think will happen in HR over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, I can't predict that, but my wish is the biggest change, really, in my view, should become where the personal development becomes the main goal of any organizations, where people become aware of the strengths, the weaknesses of their creative power, and who they are in their sovereignty, taking responsibility for their own actions and also their own behaviors. Because everything in our life is a reflection of who we are, and leaders are a reflection of organization, and people are a reflection of the leaders. So, companies and HR who are responsible, I guess, for developing the staff, if they encourage their people to become the change that they want to see around them, that's when the true and long-lasting success will be inevitable.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been super interesting to talk to you.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Why not subscribe to the premium version of HR in Review? You'll get ad-free content, early and extra episodes and more. Even better, although it's the premium edition, it's absolutely free. Sign up at hrreview.co.uk/podcast.
Hi, Martina. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Amelia, for having me. It's really nice to talk to you.
Cool. So, firstly, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how your consulting practice, Meaning.Global, relates to HR?
Of course. I founded my own consultancy, Meaning.Global, 5 years ago to focus on the role and value of meaning in business and branding. And even though I was specifically focused on marketing and brand building strategy at the very beginning, especially now with what's happening with COVID and sort of rethinking of society, culture, how people behave, what they want, I am now realizing that meaning has a much bigger value in business. And I'm sort of opening up the proposition and starting to consult not just with CEOs and CMOs and innovation officers who want to, reimagine the future of their brands or businesses and see new possibilities, but also increasingly I'm interested in diversity and inclusion, employee engagement, internal communication, and things like that, which obviously fall directly under the umbrella of HR.
Great. Thank you. In your most recent post on LinkedIn that was picked up by LinkedIn News team and featured in Career Ambition Gets a Makeover, you said that the Great Resignation is actually a great awakening. Why do you say that, and what does it mean?
Yes. So this is exactly the idea that I have been playing with in my head since COVID started. So for about the last 2.5 years, and I've seen people increasingly awaken to their own sense of self and their own, authentic needs and what they actually want and desire out of their life that isn't really being told to them by, mainstream media or marketing or brands. And I've seen a significant shift in what we actually aspire to in our own lives. That isn't really brand aspiration; it's a human aspiration, and it's really connected to our own, human well-being and how do we really want to live our own lives. That really doesn't fall into the agenda of going to work on autopilot and consuming every day and not really thinking about the larger scheme of our lives. Yeah, so when I saw the article in Guardian had the title "A Bigger Paycheck," I'd rather watch the sunset. Is this the end of ambition? I thought, well, this is an interesting hook. Let me tell the story, right? So, no, this is not the end of ambition. This actually means the end of sacrificing our own lives for the cultural hypnosis of success, at least we have been told that success looks like in the Western world. And it's also awakening to the fact that success is not without, it's within. It's not how other people see us. and, perceive our own sort of economic value in society and equate it with our social value. So how much we earn does not equate to who we are as human beings and how valuable we are, right? Businesses are all about value creation, but maybe we need to, moving forward, rethink what kind of value we actually create and how we engage our own employees to create value with others. And it's sort of like a massive unraveling and unpacking of our own humanity in business right now.
Yeah, totally. I think like the whole dynamic between a work-life balance has really changed. But kind of as a follow-up to that, then, I'd love to explore what you mentioned about these people's new preferences, behaviors, and values. So in that sense, do you think that the Great Resignation will have lasting impacts on the work culture as we move forward?
I think so, but not in a way, so in a different way than we probably think right now. So I can imagine that CEOs and business leaders and HR managers are sort of freaked out right now, right? Like, what is happening? Where are all those people who are usually coming through our doors? Where is all that talent that we need to hire and no one wants to do anything because everyone wants to watch the sunset, right? Or like looks for alternative modes of creating their own revenue streams through YouTube, or everybody wants to be YouTuber or influencer or like start doing their own things or like selling crypto, or like there are so many new opportunities how you can actually like be fully self-sufficient human in society and not work for a corporation right now. So I can imagine that that's kind of scary, but it doesn't, I think it's like what we're seeing right now, it's the beginning of a wave, right? So as people are rethinking their own needs in life, obviously it makes sense for us to see a massive amount of resignation. Okay, I resign, I don't want to do this anymore. Now I'm going to rethink what I actually want out of life. So I can imagine that this would be like 2 to, let's say, 3-5 years, but obviously all the people cannot fully sustain themselves as sort of like and create a fully decentralized economic system that nobody will go to work anymore. I mean, it will die down a little bit. It is a hype right now because it's very new and people have been obviously burdened and very stressed and very sort of checked out of society for a very long time. So this sort of got cascaded down to this effect. But I think moving forward out of this momentary reaction is we will need to, rethink how we work and like what kind of incentives we give people, and understand that, as you said, as you talked about the work-life balance, there really is no work-life balance. And to equate work with balance in an equal amount of importance in life, with like a hyphenated word, work-life balance, is fundamentally wrong. It's a wrong mental construct because life is balance on its own, right? And work is just a part of life. So there is no work-life balance. It doesn't have like 50-50 importance. There are other things in life. There are relationships, there are hobbies, there are what we want to do, there's traveling, there are family, children. And work is just one of those things, like clusters that are a part of life. Work provides the means for us to live the full life. It's not the end all and be all of life to work. That's not. And I think it has been for a very long time, because what we've seen in movies and through, through marketing and media, it's been sort of sold to us that if you want to be better off in society, you need to obviously consume more, and to consume more, you need to work more. And we've been on this rat race for decades and decades and decades. And now we're coming out of it and seeing, wait a minute, it's not true.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's so important to remember that work is just an aspect of our lives, right? But yeah, I read a really interesting article of yours entitled "What is the Real Value of Diversity in Business?" and it was published on your website, Meaning.Global. Here you discuss that the real value of diversity isn't social representation, but value creation. So what does this really mean for organizations, especially, for retaining employees and attracting new talent?
Sure. Okay. So I can unpack that. So the article was an in-depth article. It's touching, upon the topic of diversity and inclusion at work in organizations from multiple different perspectives. And the social representation versus value creation argument, I think, is very important because I feel that ever since we introduced DEI, diversity and inclusion, as a separate concept in business culture and for organizations to look after and to manage, we've sort of created a whole new problem on its own. And I feel that it's because we fundamentally misunderstood what diversity in business means and what it's supposed to do. It is actually to create more value, because businesses are not governments, businesses are not public officials. Their job isn't to equally represent every single minority, race, age group in society proportionally to create an equal and balanced sort of organization. So you're not really creating diversity. What you are creating is your own organization being more diverse, right? Like more open to collaboration and belonging, where people who come from all walks of life can feel respected and valued for who they are. So I think that we are really, with this concept, we are creating more division on top of division, rather than really saying that diversity is just an instrument for us to make everyone feel included and part of the conversation, and not be a part of a box to populate or to fit in. And we need all this diversity, whether it's physical diversity or cognitive diversity. Why? In order to create more diverse value. So diversity and inclusion really should be just a mechanism or a vehicle, like a strategic vehicle, strategic engine for organizations to create more diverse value as an outcome of what organizations actually produce. So this could be innovation. It could be fundamentally reimagining different parts of the value chain and what we actually create in the world, what kind of impact we want to create, because we have all of these diverse people in the organization who see the world in different ways, who experience the world in different ways. This like complete diversity of human potential, that is the important part, right? That is the important part for the diversity conversation, not to populate boxes and say, okay, so we have everything covered, and now we are safe in terms of, politics and basically, risk aversion. So it is. I feel that the problem is that we started looking at diversity in business as if it was a social and ideological problem, but it's not. It's actually a cultural and a business problem. It pertains to how we see the world, which is the cognitive diversity, and the collective sort of network around own experiences and different viewpoints and different skill sets, and the human potential that we have, and then how do we then utilize it to create more diverse organization internally that celebrates our humanity and respects our own humanity, and then how do we channel that into creation to bring new value into the world.
Great. So, in that sense, then, how do you think that these diversity issues are impacting the ongoing Great Resignation?
I wouldn't say it's like a single driver of the Great Resignation, but I would definitely say it's one of the drivers.
Yeah.
Because people don't really feel valued. They don't feel, represented, but not represented in terms of, again, like social representation, represented in a way that there's no business that creates value that fundamentally reflects who I am and what I want out of my life and is aligned with my own values and how I see myself and what I want, right, out of my life. We see masses of businesses doing exactly the same things, and the only differentiating factor is marketing campaigns and branding. It's just we need to represent this diversity in how we do business. And I don't feel that we do. There is this disconnect between business on one hand and humanity, and we need to bridge that gap.
Follow us on Twitter at HR Review, or join us on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Great. Well, in light of that, then, I'd really love to explore how exactly you think organizations can retain their employees and hire new talent in the future. Because, will this reaction and everything we've been speaking about to the Great Resignation require, almost a transformation and perhaps even, a redesigning of companies to retain the talent?
I definitely do think it will require transformation. I would definitely do think it will require redesigning. But then again, it cannot be done in the way that we designed the matrix in the first place, right? From the top down perspective, saying this is how organizations work. And if you don't like it, and if you're not aligned with our culture and what we want out of your job description, here's the door. There was no alternative. There was no, let's do it differently, or try to find consensus. It has been very much black and white world up until now. And I think that in order to redesign how we work and reimagine the future of work, we really need to start collaborating internally. So no one knows your company better than your own employees. So start having these conversations with them. Start thinking about work as a two-way stream, not just somebody sitting in a chair looking at a computer doing something and then getting, a salary at the end of the month. It's not one way, it's a conversation. Everybody's talking about this, like, we need to harness the culture of empathy and listening and understanding. Yeah, that's great, but do you actually do it? Do you actually sit down with people and listen to what they have to say? Do you take their tips for improvement? It needs to be cultural. It needs to be a part of a cultural change. And then, if people actually start feeling heard and valued and respected and feel like their voice matters, then you can create a movement internally as a culture. And once you have that, the culture can actually start changing how the business works from the inside.
Yeah, exactly. But, I do guess that, bringing in this new talent, it does open the door, to many problems surrounding the current skills shortage. So, in light of that, how do you think organizations can navigate this new market, especially where, the power has shifted towards the candidates?
So you're talking not just about the transformation of the current culture, you're talking about how do you actually successfully hire and retain new talent, or how do you
Yeah,
know
exactly.
how do you spot what talent do you need?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you really cannot do that unless you understand what the organization needs right now and where you are in what stage of development or in your own evolution. Because how do you want to successfully hire and retain new talent if you don't know who you need and why you need that person? Like a diagnostics, or understand where you are right now. And then based on that, and based on the vision for the future and the future strategy, you then understand, okay, so this is the gap that I need to fill. I need people who think like this, for instance, who are very creative and very imaginative, and who can help us drive our new innovation initiative, because we really want to deliver this type of products XYZ to this type of audience that was underrepresented. People are an asset to companies, and unless you understand what kind of talent you need, you really cannot. I mean, of course, like if you're lucky you can spot them, you can hire them, but you will not be able to retain them because you have nothing to give them in return, right? They will leave you if they're not satisfied. That again is what drives this great resignation, and it's a sign and a signal of a collective dissatisfaction with how work is done and how unsatisfying it is to their lives.
Great. Well, I guess, my last question to you then is focusing on the future. So, moving forward, is there anything else specific that you can think of, or that you want to recommend organizations do to retain the top talent that we've just been talking about, that they really want to keep?
That they really want to keep. So they already have this talent and they want to keep them.
Exactly, yes.
I would say it comes down to, let's say, two or three things. The people need to feel valued and obviously listened to. They need to feel like they have some kind of power or agency within within the organization, and actually can directly affect change or change things. So I would say be very flexible and transparent and open about giving people sense of agency to actually change things for the better, if that's the reason why you hired them. And then I would also say that the culture needs to be much more open, and it needs to breathe. If people like this top talent get the momentum in the organization, there needs to be sort of like a collaborative spirit of people, supporting them and driving initiatives and not feeling stifled by how the organization operates, by the organizational matrix. And then be more flexible, maybe as a third point, be more flexible with how they want to work. If that is the top talent and you really want to retain them, I think, we have seen in COVID for the last 2 years that it is possible to work remotely. It is possible to work on flexible schedules. So let just people, worry about how they want to work. And I think the only thing you should worry about is the performance and the results and the outcomes of the work that they have for your business.
Great. Well, super interesting. It was great to have you on, Martina. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Amelia. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
The HR in Review podcast is brought to you by hrreview.co.uk. hrreview.co.uk is a website dedicated to human resources and related professionals. News items are posted daily together with analysis looking in depth at topical HR issues. You can sign up for our range of specialist newsletters at hrreview.co.uk/sign-up and follow us on Twitter at hrreview or join us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you for listening.